Okay, let's be honest. What do you picturize when you hear the word Bihar? Right? You probably imagine a place like this. Or maybe you imagine women who don't have a voice. Or maybe, just maybe, you also imagine cows whose hips don't lie. But if these are the images we have of Bihar, then what do you think is going on here? Hi, my name is Eureka, and Bihar is my current home. To help you wrap your head around that, I have a story to share. It all started 4 years ago. It was the August of 2016, and I entered this room for the first time. In it, I saw 10 new faces of about 18-somethings and 20-somethings, and I was 28 myself. I was told earlier on that the people I was going to meet with had just come back from a field trip, and that they were probably going to go through a reflection session. So when I entered this room, they quickly shook my hands, and there I was within seconds, seated amidst them. A snippet of the conversation went like this. An 18-something, evidently upset girl says to the person opposite her, "Are you trying to say that learning only happens in a set environment? That it doesn't happen when we are, say, walking on the street, riding the bus, or laughing with our friends?" To which a flustered but calm 20-year-old boy says, "No, that's not what I meant. What I'm trying to say is that when we as a group venture out, being together is important, and understanding each other's emotions is also important. It may require for either one of us to compromise at that moment, but for a healthy rapport to be maintained, understanding needs to be on a two-way street." It's a sweet story, I thought. But I also thought, wow, within my first 20 minutes of being in this group, I had witnessed open communication, conflict resolution, team building, and friendship. Perhaps a lot of us can actually relate to this story. With the hope and excitement with which we venture out on trips with our friends, but the unfortunate twist of group dynamics that leaves a bitter taste. And if we don't get to talk about it, that bitterness usually festers. But if a space is provided by design or by accident, that bitterness usually resolves. And from it, at least two things evolve. A stronger trust-based relationship, or two, you learn something new about yourself. But what's new about this story, right? I'm sure you all have experienced it at some point or the other. But let me add a little bit more to this story. And for this part, I invite you to close your eyes and relive with me the setting of that environment. So close your eyes, and you'll realize that the conversation happened in Hindi. Take a step further back, and you'll start to recognize the rectangular shape of the room, about the size of 4 of these TEDx mats. Its cement walls are in need of dye paint, the ceiling fans are not yet put up, and a rickety hand-me-down air cooler is the only respite everybody has in that room from the 32-degree humid afternoon heat. Take a few steps further back, and you start to see the floor of the room, how there's cotton mattresses laid out from floor to floor, or rather wall to wall, and there are books scattered around, and they cover topics like design, pedagogy, circular economy, social psychology. And of course, there were wires crisscrossing all over the place for laptops. This time, take a few more steps back, and you're now out on the main street. It's about 3 meters wide, and curious neighborhood kids are watching. A 6-year-old boy holds his 10-month-old baby sister. He's barefoot, but the tarmac heat doesn't seem to bother him. It's early afternoon, maybe he should be in school. But his parents are both out working in the fields, and baby sister needs supervision. you may open your eyes. The story we just witnessed happened in Thakurganj, Bihar. That summer afternoon was my first experience of the paradoxes of the state. 69 years post-independence, this land of Gautam Bodh and Nalanda University, of spirituality and of knowledge, was largely mired in this narrative of misery. So much so that I had never imagined to witness a conversation like that in Bihar, let alone learn something from it. So as I pulled away from these thoughts of mine and I looked back into that room, I saw a room filled with diffused tension and laughter. And I smiled to myself. I was witnessing the quiet rebellion of these 20-somethings whose idea of learning has nothing to do with mark sheets, but everything to do with human experience, and who have rejected the mediocre image of Bihar. Welcome to Project Potential, and many such grassroots organizations who believe that self-expression is the key to community transformation. Today at Project Potential in Bihar, we strive to enable rural youth to become rural leaders who can then solve rural India's problems inclusively and sustainably. To quote my teammate Zubin, our efforts are based on the simple premise that if we focus on what is right with people instead of what is wrong with them, the possibilities are limitless. And so, our mission is to equip young individuals very much like you in rural Bihar with the skills, knowledge, attitude, network, and resources required for them to create the future they dream of. But at its most basic, we facilitate self-exploration, and then self-expression, and then the agency for change is only a natural outcome. But who am I, and why am I talking to you about Bihar, youth, learning environments, and leaders? This would be an extreme simplification, but for the sake of brevity, this is how my career story was meant to unfold. Holistic education in premier boarding school, thanks to my parents, of course. Study to become an architect, which, by the way, was 100% my choice. Join a firm, or better still, a multinational company. Work up the ladder, dream of post-retirement. Oh, and as a bonus, I was also an active citizen, which meant that between hours of work, I enjoyed cleanup drives and engaging in urban and ecological walks and activities. And please don't judge me here, but I also created a waste segregation system and called it my Valentine. Basically, on paper, there was a clear path for me, and I was smoothly on it. But then, there was a hunch. I suppose evident from this midnight note I found a few months earlier. It was not like I was unhappy or dissatisfied, very evidently. But I started to feel like the predictability of each day was getting to me. I started to feel that until that point in life, all my life experiences at that point was selected from an elaborate menu, but from a single cuisine of life. And I wanted to try a few more. Perhaps it was Dr. Mayj's TED Talk that finally turned my hunch into an action. She said in it, forget about identity crisis and get some identity capital. Invest in who you want to be next. So long story short, a few months later, instead of taking the promotion I was offered, I had a heart-to-heart with my boss and, of course, my parents. And to calm everybody's nerves, including my own, I said, it is just for a year. And thus began this part of my journey. You see, the milestone set for us by society does not allow us the time to reflect on the points, who are you, what do you want to be, and how can your life contribute to the human story. And to double that, for those of us who have not gotten time or who have not gotten a chance to ponder over this thought enough, we lack the vocabulary to express our hunch, and nor do we know where to begin. But given what's at stake, we jump. We jump into the unknown using our life's portfolio as scaffolding, no matter what we think of its quality until that time. That year, as I figured this out for myself, I decided to travel around the country. And I started to sample experiences and interests that I was curious about. And I suppose I was also trying to identify which was that cuisine that I wanted to really enjoy. And that's how, in that dingy room that day in Thakurganj, I found my second home. But in my first home, with my family and friends, I had some convincing to do. Are you going to work in Bihar? Are you going to be safe? Is the organization going to pay you money? And will you still be practicing as an architect? And to all of that, my answer was yes, and much more. I was also going to design a sustainable campus in a context never attempted before, understand the social workings of a social organization, and breathe fresh air on a daily basis. And so I did. Back in that room in Thakurganj, I learned that like individuals, organizations also need a form of self-expression. And for us, that takes the form of Archala. The idea is really simple. Design a space, facilitate exposure, provide tools, and most importantly, invite individuals to reimagine their communities free from judgment. It will thus be a space that intrigues, involves, and inspires people to explore sustainable living and create an impact in transformational ways in their communities. In our little village called Bhelatupi in the northeast of Bihar, nestled amidst tea plantation, we are sowing the seeds for tomorrow. It will thus be a space where we sow the seeds for tomorrow for new relationships and ideas that prioritizes the local community socially, economically, and environmentally, that celebrates the interconnectedness of life by relooking at how we engage with land, water, and our surrounding, and that makes sustainable living desirable and in sync with the aspirations of the current generation. So 3 years on, as our story unfolds, this is where disagreement meets discussion. I'm sorry, I'm just going to go through these a bit. Where pollution becomes a resource, and where hazardous sanitation situation becomes a learning opportunity. This is where, together with our partners, we bring to life our commitment to a sustainable living and design. With very basic things, for example, making sure we have natural light and ventilation, and we use primary materials that are local and climatically appropriate. And this is, of course, the space where we celebrate self-introspection. Our on-ground experiences remind us daily of Einstein's insight. He said, we can't solve our problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. Institutes of this nature are required in rural India for multiple reasons, and population is just one of them. As per the census of 2011, India had 69% urban and 31% rural population demography. Even by the year 2015, the projection is still hovering around the 50% mark. In other words, if rural India were a country today, it would be 2.5 times the size of United States population. So I suppose it's only logical that while we focus on urban infrastructure and leadership, we also focus on rural leadership at scale. And in all of this, why should you and I care? Well, we should care simply because of the sheer magnitude of work left to be done and of the potentials untapped, and simply because we can. But all said and done, let me also let you in on a little secret. That afternoon, in my naivety, when I said yes to Archala, I thought I was saying yes to a design collaboration. I did not realize that I was saying yes to everything I knew until that point as an architect and as a human, and everything else I had no idea could existed or could impact me. And boy, am I glad to have been naive, I suppose. You see, Each element we've decided to address at Archala is being sprouted in a space devoid of the technologies and of the information systems required for us to um, uh, finish our work well. These are same information systems that make similar work easier in an urban context. Take, for example, on the technical front, we are building a game-changing rural space where no formal construction ecosystem exists, from material supply to printing shops to stable internet. On the social front, we are attempting construction upskilling for individuals who are struggling right now with basic hand-to-mouth existence. And on the learning environment front, we want to share pivotal thinking models with youth whose experience in education until that far has only been rote learning. And so, in such a situation, one is then forced to scratch the underbelly of what is it that I truly know and understand. How can I explain concepts without jargon? How can I motivate individuals to imagine a future without a viable solution for today? And can a construction site also be yet another turf for self-exploration? In this journey of us, we've had to time and again work on our own awareness, recognize latent possibilities, break patterns, and create new ones. I said yes to this journey because I was inspired and I saw possibilities. I continue because each day I get to see potential amidst individuals whose story otherwise would have been lost in that image of Bihar. Today I find myself surrounded by people who journey along life with the eternal curiosity of the traveler's mind. And because of that, my life has become richer. My friends think I'm Ellie, the woolly mammoth from Ice Age. Somebody who tastes risk and, saves the world or something. But in reality, I'm just Scrat, the saber-toothed squirrel, obsessed with a nut. And I invite all of you to be just as naive and ordinary as Scrat. And take up a challenge without preconceived notions of the people, the work, or the location itself. Thank you.